You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristadoulou.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristadoulou, and today we dive into picks for week number 6 of the NFL. We've got 15 games slated this weekend, with the Packers and Steelers both on a bye week. So we'll dive right in, beginning with Thursday Night Football. So make sure you comment your picks down below, your thoughts on my picks. We're currently sitting at a record of 46-32, coming off an 8-6 week. So not a bad week, not a great week, somewhere in between. But starting with that very first matchup, like I said, we have ourselves the Denver Broncos taking on the Kansas City Chiefs in Thursday Night Football. And this is a game where the Broncos come in not having beaten the Kansas City Chiefs since September 17th of 2015. They have not beaten the Broncos since Patrick Mahomes took over, and it honestly goes even further back than that, since basically I believe the season after Peyton Manning left, if I'm not mistaken. So it has been quite a while since the Denver Broncos have taken down the Kansas City Chiefs, and I've got to be honest with you guys, I don't really think that this little streak of losses here is going to end this weekend. Denver coming into this game here is currently working towards a historically bad defense this season, allowing 36 points per game. I just don't really know if they have the ability to slow down Kansas City, and on top of that, deal with a defense that has honestly kind of outperformed Kansas City to this point. Kansas City's offense, I should say, to this point in the season. So you look at just the way these two teams match up, coupled with the fact that the Browns are going to be missing Baron Browning, Frank Clark, DJ Jones on defense. Greg Dulcich is also going to be missing as well. I mean, the Chiefs are currently worried a little bit about George Karlaftis, and I know that Travis Kelce's currently sitting on the injury report as well. I guess we'll kind of find out as we get closer to game time if he winds up playing or not, but even minus Travis Kelce, with the injuries that Denver has and just the way this team has looked on defense, I don't quite know if they're going to be able to keep up with the Chiefs here. I just have a really hard time buying in on Denver. So with that, I'm going to go with the Chiefs winning this game. I have them winning pretty comfortably as well, 33-17. Not a very close matchup here. There maybe could be a few extra points on top of that from Denver's end if the game starts to be a runaway and maybe the Chiefs allow some garbage time points. But I expect the Chiefs to win this game fairly handedly and fairly comfortably. Now we look at our London game for this week, and we have ourselves the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Tennessee Titans, again in London. So another 9:30 a.m. game, and I've got to say, as somebody that lives on the East Coast, I love these 9:30 start times. And for those of you that live on the West Coast, I'm jealous that this is kind of what you get basically every single week with the, what is it? Because we get 1 o'clock, so that means you get 12, 11, 10. 10 o'clock start times over there on the West Coast? Very jealous of this morning football stuff that you guys get every single week over there. But looking at this matchup here, we have two teams coming in with some fairly long injury reports, and I mean, you can't really sit here and say one team is more injured than the other. I think they're both kind of dealing with a fair amount of issues in certain areas on both sides of the ball here. And on top of that, this is one of those games that I'm actually kind of looking forward to, because the Titans and Ravens have kind of had themselves a little bit of a budding rivalry the last few years. It's been very chippy, to say the least, especially during like real big rise of like Derrick Henry and the Titans a few years ago. And since then, I feel like every single one of these games winds up having some sparks and fireworks. So this is one that I'm really looking forward to. But one thing that I'm really looking at in this matchup here, and I think ultimately winds up being a big deciding factor, because both defenses are pretty good, to say the least. The Ravens allowing only 15 points a game. They're second best in the NFL when it comes to allowing points. And then when it comes to the Titans, they're ninth in the NFL, allowing about a little over 18. So you have two teams really good at slowing down their opponents' offenses, two solid defenses at that, but I do give that edge to Baltimore here. And the big reason why is because that pass rush for the Ravens, despite what they've kind of dealt with injury-wise so far this season, has 18 sacks, which is second best in the NFL, despite having the 4th lowest pressure percentage of the NFL. They are very efficient with the limited opportunities they get at getting to the quarterback, and they get their quarterbacks and bring them down. And when you look at the Tennessee Titans offensive line, they've allowed 17 sacks this season, which ties them at 5th most in the NFL. So I am a little bit concerned on that front for them. I don't know quite how this offensive line of Tennessee is going to stand up against this Ravens defense here. Couple that with the fact that, I mean, the Ravens are literally the 3rd best passing defense and 7th best run defense in terms of yards per game allowed. There's a lot just kind of stacked up in the Ravens' favor here. And with the Tennessee Titans kind of being a very up and down team right now, I know that the Ravens are coming off of a really tough performance, but from against the Steelers last week. But I mean, you take away those 7 drops that the receivers had, and I don't think that the Ravens wind up losing that game, and they're probably coming into this game a lot hotter. So I'll take Baltimore. I have them winning 23-19. I think it's a defensive slugfest. I don't expect a ton of points in this matchup here, but I do like Baltimore coming out with the victory in London. Now looking at the early window, 1 p.m. Eastern time games. So again, those, 10 o'clock games for you West Coast people? Again, very jealous about that. We have, first off, the Atlanta Falcons hosting the Washington Commanders here. 2 teams in some very different places defensively. You have an Atlanta Falcons team whose defense has been pretty good for the most part so far this season, whereas the Commanders, I feel like, are a defense that are not quite producing to the level of talent that they have on the football field, and it's a little bit disappointing and kind of surprising as well. You couple that with the fact that the Commanders are just kind of turnover happy right now. They've turned the ball over 10 times this season already, which is tied for 3rd most in the league. I'm a little bit concerned about Washington coming into this game here, especially coming off of the loss that they had this week as well. I don't really know if I can go with them in this game. I mean, yeah, the Falcons might not be the craziest team in terms of offensive production this year, but I do think that there is a recipe for success for Atlanta. You look at the run defense of the Commanders, and they're 24th in the NFL, allowing about 133 yards a game. Running the football is, of course, the Falcons' bread and butter. They are a top 10 rushing attack, and they have been for the last few years. They love to run the football over there with Arthur Smith. So I do think that if they can establish the run early and just kind of gain control, maintain possession of the football, they play pretty clean football as well. They're not necessarily turning the ball over too often here, but they also don't really force turnovers as well, is kind of like the other thing. So with that in mind, I do think this game is kind of a bit of a toss-up here, but it being in Atlanta and me trusting in the Falcons defense just a little bit more than I do the Commanders in the state that they're in right now, I think I'm going to go with Atlanta. Again, another lower scoring affair, 21-17, not anything too crazy, but I do like the Falcons at home in this one. Now we look at the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Chicago Bears. And I've got to say, I spent a lot of time trying to decide on this one because this is 2 teams right now that are just in vastly different places than they expected to be, where the Vikings just can't seem to stop turning the ball over, and the Chicago Bears have just not amounted to what anyone was expecting them to be coming into this season here with so many high expectations. You couple that with the fact that both of these teams are near the bottom in the NFL in points allowed. The Vikings right now are allowing about 24 a game. The Bears are allowing a whopping 31.5 points a game. So there's a real opportunity that we see a handful of points in this game here, especially if we see the Bears offense that we saw last week as opposed to what we saw the first 4 weeks of the season prior to that. If the Bears offense can just take advantage of another team that is kind of struggling, not so much I would say defensively, but just with the inefficiency of the offense kind of putting the defense in more bad spots than I think they would like to be, I think the Bears do have at least a shot in this game here, especially with it being in Chicago. But I do think that even though the Vikings are going to be without Justin Jefferson for the foreseeable future, you look at this Bears passing defense and just the way that they let teams move the football up and down the field. They're averaging about 286 yards per game allowed. I do think that the Vikings can at least formulate something with TJ Hawkinson. Madison's been, while he hasn't blown the world away, he's a solid receiving back. You do still have Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne. So you do have some good receivers to throw the football to, and I know the Vikings love to throw the football. That is their bread and butter. If you take advantage of what has been a very weak secondary and just pass defense overall from the Chicago Bears, a team that also can't really generate a ton of pressure, and just don't turn over the football, you have a real good shot. Not to mention, the Bears are the worst third down defense in the NFL, so that means you're going to have plenty of opportunity to continue to sustain drives against them. So I do think I like the Vikings going into this game here. Road Warriors, both teams 1-4. I don't really think there's a real favorite pick in this game here. I know that the Bears have only put together one really good game, and that was last week, and I guess against the Denver Broncos, if you want to call that one as well, even though they epically collapsed and lost. It was a pretty good game up until the very end. I do think I like the Vikings in this matchup here. I have them winning 26-20. The over-under on this one is set at 44.5, and when I was looking at all the numbers for like betting odds and things like that, I noticed that one. That kind of stuck out to me. With 2 teams that are averaging, again, Vikings about 24.5 points a game, and the Bears 31.5 points a game. I feel like an over-under of 44.5 is kind of low, so I do kind of like the over on that one there. And yeah, I only have it sitting at 46 as a final score, but I would not be too surprised to see maybe the Vikings push closer to 30, and maybe even the Bears get an opportunity to find themselves within like 20 to 25 points in this game. I just don't really know how they came to 44.5 on that one, unless they really think that the Vikings offense is just going to completely tank minus Justin Jefferson. And while that is a possibility, I don't think it's going to necessarily be as bad of a drop-off as some people might expect. Like, Jefferson's great, don't get me wrong, but there is some other talent that can catch the football over there in Minnesota, and they still have a pretty solid offensive line on top of that. I just don't think their offensive production is going to be as steep of a drop-off, especially in this game with a Bears defense that's just not great at defending the pass. Now we're looking at Seattle heading into Cincinnati. Now, the Seahawks are coming off of a massive performance on Monday Night Football against the New York Giants, whereas Cincinnati kind of finding their footing for the first time this year and having a really dominant performance against an Arizona Cardinals team that seems on the fast track to picking somewhere within the top 5 of the NFL in this year's draft. But here's the deal. Yes, Joe Burrow finally played like Joe Burrow last week, and I'm here for it. I'm excited for it. I picked the Arizona Cardinals last week to upset the Bengals because I honestly thought they were that broken, but clearly they have found themselves, and maybe it took being able to take advantage of the Cardinals to really figure it out. But they are going to be without wide receiver T. Higgins, could be without wide receiver T. Higgins. That has been the conversation so far this week. And then cornerback Chidobe Awuzie is also somebody to keep an eye on as well. So you're missing 2 important pieces on both the offense and defense. And the Seahawks are kind of fresh coming into this game here. Like, yeah, it's a travel game, but you're coming off of a week off. Yeah, you're traveling from West Coast to East Coast, but I mean, they had no trouble coming into New York last week and doing their thing to the tune of, what was it, like 11 sacks they ended up finishing up. The Bengals offensive line has been very middle of the pack at best. And even then, while they haven't allowed on the higher end of sacks, they've still allowed 11. And I feel like they allow a decent amount of pressure on top of that. With the Seahawks depth that they have on the defensive front, they're able to generate a ton of pressure and finish things off. Clearly, if they have a poor enough offensive line that they're facing against, I am a little bit concerned about some of the injuries, especially coming out of a bye week. The Seahawks are dealing with issues with Charles Cross, DK Metcalf, and Jordan Brooks. They're all listed as questionable. So there is that to keep an eye on there. But I really, really like the Seahawks in this game. I do think that just what we've seen from them so far this year, they're currently sitting at 3-1. Off a massive dominating performance. I don't really think that having such an early bye is really going to hurt them and, make them maybe come in a little bit, like sleepwalk their way into a game against the Bengals. I think that maybe the Bengals come back down to earth just a little bit here. I would say that the Seahawks are probably a better team than the Arizona Cardinals. So maybe not quite the struggles we've seen from Cincinnati during the first 4 weeks of the season. Maybe last week was their true bounce back game or their get right game that they needed here. But I think Seahawks being a tough opponent, coming off some rest, do come in and get a victory here. I have them winning 29-23. The Bengals defense has not been nearly as good as I was expecting it to be coming into the season. They're allowing nearly 23 points a game. And when you look at Seattle, they're pushing nearly 28 per game on offense this season. So I think there's a good opportunity there to see some points from the Seahawks, especially if DK Metcalf ends up playing as well. Obviously, that's something to keep an eye on. But the Seahawks at +2.5 underdogs, I really like that. I think that there's a really good chance they come in here and upset and win in this game here. I know it's in Cincinnati. I know it's Joe Burrow and the Bengals, and they look great coming off last week. But minus T. Higgins, minus a top corner, and me not really just believing in them just this moment, and I think they're still working through some issues. I don't know if Joe Burrow's health is really at 100% just yet. I know they've been saying that he's looking really good in practice, and he's been looking good at least the last week and a half now, but I still need to see some more before I can really buy back into the Bengals. So they're a team that hurt me personally with just how high I was on them in this season, and they've cost me a lot of picks to this point. So give me the Seahawks for the win. If not, the Bengals bounce back, I'm okay with that too. Next, we have ourselves the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Cleveland Browns. And I've got to say, with Deshaun Watson still potentially not playing, despite being cleared prior to the game that they played 2 weeks ago, I'm kind of concerned as to what's going on in Cleveland. If Deshaun Watson and management, head coach, whoever it is having an issue, it just doesn't make sense to me. He was cleared to play, chose not to play, and now we're still hearing about him missing practices. I don't really know what's going on. And offensively, minus Deshaun Watson, I can't really give the Browns much of a chance here. Like, yeah, the defense has been great, but we saw just how bad this offense could be minus Deshaun Watson, and it honestly wasn't too great with him in there. And, like, they had one really good game with him, and then, of course, he misses. Then he chooses to sit out, and now here we are. I don't really know what to make of this all. So I like the 49ers. I don't really see how the 49ers drop this game. It would take a massive effort from the defense, especially if Deshaun Watson's not playing. If he is playing, I think the Browns, maybe have a chance to slow down what has been an unbelievable 49ers offense to this point. I don't think they've scored less than 30 points in a game so far this season at this point. They're currently averaging 33.5. With the number one scoring defense in the NFL too, allowing only 13.5 points a game. Work is cut out for the Browns. I don't really know how they keep up with the 49ers if they get rolling, especially minus Deshaun Watson. But even with Watson under center, I still like the 49ers. Give them the victory, and I think they win pretty handedly, 31-13. This one, I think, ends up getting ugly for the Browns. Now we're looking at Carolina taking on Miami, and this is another one of those games. Carolina's coming in 0-5. The Miami Dolphins boast the best offense in the NFL. The Carolina Panthers are allowing nearly 30 points per game here, and with the way their offense has looked through 5 weeks, I should say 4 weeks minus the 1 week that Bryce Young missed, I don't really know how the Panthers are going to keep up with the Dolphins. I think maybe there's an opportunity for some garbage time points on the Panthers' end, especially if the Dolphins jump out to an early lead. But minus like any turnover issues that we saw from the Dolphins against the Giants last week, this is another one of those games that I kind of feel like it's going to be another rout and trouncing. I mean, just you look at all the numbers, you look at the performances of both of these teams. The only real thing that the Carolina Panthers have going for them right now is that despite all the issues that they've had being at 0-5, they are actually the 5th best pass defense in the NFL right now, allowing only 185 yards a game. But I don't know how that's going to hold up against this Miami Dolphins passing attack that has just been unbelievable to this point in the season, that only really the Bills have figured out how to slow down. So I'll take the Dolphins. I have them winning 32-20. Like I said, I think the Panthers maybe can find some extra points later in the game as Miami starts to run away with it, but I just don't really see a clear path to victory for the Carolina Panthers in this one. Now looking at an AFC South matchup, we have the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, and this one is in Jacksonville. And the Colts' recent history against the Jaguars in Jacksonville is not pretty. The Colts cannot buy themselves a win in Jacksonville, and they haven't for, I believe, the last 6 or 7 years. So when you look at the actual matchup itself, Gardner Minshew revenge game here. First and foremost, he's going to be starting in replacement for Anthony Richardson for the foreseeable future, and fitting that his first game as the starter winds up being against the Jacksonville Jaguars, so I'll be looking forward to that. Now, as for the Jaguars, they're coming off of a 2-0, 2-week trip to London. They've really impressed me, and through those couple of weeks, they're completely shutting down the Atlanta Falcons and then going and upsetting the Buffalo Bills. And whether you believe that that was the Bills making a mistake coming in late to that game or not, they still got the W. So any sort of excuse aside, you still have to give credit to the Jaguars for getting the job done. Their passing attack has looked really good. They've done an excellent job of distributing the ball really, really well, whether it's to Christian Kirk, whether it's to Calvin Ridley, or maybe you're focusing on your running back in Travis Etienne. They've done a very good job of ball distribution, and I really like it. And aside from maybe like a rogue pass here or there, that I feel like Trevor Lawrence, for as good as he is always good for like 2, maybe 3 throws a game that just kind of leave you scratching your head wondering how on earth was that Trevor Lawrence that just threw the football there. He's very consistent, and again, does a great job taking care of the football. You couple that with the fact that they have a solid rushing attack as well, and you're going up against the Colts team that you don't necessarily know how Gardner Minshew is going to do stepping into this QB1 role here. So now we're going to get to see what Gardner Minshew looks like as the starter for the foreseeable future with the offense, not just, thinking, okay, he's going to be in for this game specifically. Like, no, they're going for the long haul. So now they're really building out the offense for Gardner Minshew's skill set. So I just don't really know. It's kind of an unknown offensively for the Colts for me. And the Jaguars defense, for what it's worth, has been really good, especially stopping the run. And that's kind of the bread and butter of the Colts right now. Zach Moss has been very impressive in the absence of Jonathan Taylor. Taylor did not get a ton of work last week. It sounds like his workload's going to increase this week. So that'll be something that the Jaguars, I'm sure, are going to be focusing on as they go through practice this week and as they game plan. But they have the 5th best rushing defense in the NFL. So I just, right now, I want to go with Indy as like an upset, especially with just the energy that it feels like that team has with Gardner Minshew under center. But I think the Jacksonville Jaguars at this point, minus Anthony Richardson on the Colts end, are the better team. I think they have a better wide receiver core. And while Jonathan Taylor could arguably be the better running back between he and Travis Etienne, is he fully back? Is he going to be allowed to, do his thing? Is he the starter for this game? I don't know. Still a little bit of a ways out before those decisions are made, before the actual game time on Sunday. So I'll go with Jacksonville. I think it's a tighter contest, though. I think Indianapolis can hold their own. I have the Jaguars winning only 23-20, but a good game between two division rivals, and just the Colts' struggles of winning in Jacksonville continuing here, and unfortunate for me, a Colts fan. Now we look at the Houston Texans taking on the New Orleans Saints here. The Texans, kind of world beaters, a team that has been very close in a lot of their contests. Even when they're coming up short and losing, it's typically not by a lot here, and they have a couple of big victories underneath their belts as well, one being over the Jacksonville Jaguars we were just talking about a second ago here. But CJ Stroud, man, I mean, what can you say? He's having an excellent rookie campaign, and he's looking to make that 6 weeks in a row to start things off. Still has yet to throw an interception. And in this matchup here, we're looking at the Texans' number 3 passing offense going up against the New Orleans Saints' number 4 passing defense here. I think this one's going to be a really fun matchup to keep an eye on here. But if you look at the Saints offensively, I think they're starting to find a little bit of rhythm. Alvin Kamara is now a couple weeks back from his suspension. Derek Carr had a solid performance last week. I know the AC joint injury was something that I really focused on. I was kind of concerned about last week, but I think he looked a little bit better this week. So with that, I mean, 18 of 26, 186 yards, couple of touchdowns, did a good job just protecting the football, not, putting it in any poor places. And again, Kamara looked solid in his performance last week as well. I really think that this game is going to be a big litmus test for how good the Houston Texans offense can really be. Tank Dell, questionable in this game. If he winds up being able to go, I think would really help out this offense altogether, but we have to wait and see as far as that goes. But ultimately, I do think that I like the Saints in this matchup. I think that I trust their defense just a little bit more. They have the 4th best defense in terms of points allowed right now. They're allowing just over 15 points a game, whereas the Texans, they're allowing about 20. Still a really good unit in their own right, top 11. They're 11th in the NFL in terms of points allowed. And you have two teams that are relatively similar as far as point production on offense. You can give a slight edge to the Texans. They're about 23 points a game to the Saints, not Titans, Saints 19. But overall, I do like the Saints defense a lot more in this game here, and I think that winds up being the deciding factor. And I don't want to jinx CJ Stroud here, but I kind of feel like this might be the game that we run into that first interception here. And I haven't felt like that at any point to this season, but this Saints defense being as good as it is, coming off of as hot of a game as they just had against the New England Patriots last week, they've got to be feeling themselves. You're going into the Texans' house. Everyone's been listening to how good of a rookie campaign CJ Stroud is having, and I'm sure that the Saints defense is itching to maybe make a little bit of a mockery of that. So give me the Saints 20-17. I think the Texans hang in there, a tight loss for them, but I do like the Saints just a hair more than I do the Texans in this matchup. Now moving into the late window of games. So these are those 4 o'clock Eastern games. First one that we're looking at here, in a game that honestly I wish I didn't have to pick, and I don't think is a game that anyone is even watching or looking forward to watching, including fan bases, is the New England Patriots taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. Two of the worst offenses in the NFL right now, where the Patriots are averaging a whopping 11 points per game, and the Raiders not too far ahead, just under 16 points a game themselves. They are the 32nd and 29th scoring offenses, respectively, in the NFL. Both teams are also turnover machines. Currently, in terms of takeaway differential, the Patriots are sitting at -8, which is 30th in the NFL, and the Raiders -7, which is 29th. So the Raiders right in front of them. But yeah, this is just a matchup that I am really not looking forward to seeing. You have two very middle-of-the-road passing offenses. It's kind of crazy how close these two teams really match up here. When you look at passing yards per game, 203 for the Patriots to the Raiders 209. When you look at the rushing yards, it's Patriots 83 to the Raiders 71. Like, there's really not too much of a difference as far as the offense goes. But I do think that there is a slight edge to be given to the Patriots, at least defensively. I think they have a little bit more in the tank there, but injuries have been mounting for them, so that is something that might be starting to go away as the weeks continue on. And I mean, you're looking at two devastating games the last couple of weeks, so I think these Patriots averages are kind of working through a correction right now, and the numbers are starting to rise a little bit on defense. But I really wish I didn't have to make a pick in this game here because I'm not 100% sure on either one of these teams. But when it came down to deciding who I thought I could buy in on a little bit more here, I wound up feeling more the Raiders than anything else. And my explanation for that is because when you look at the Patriots offensively, for all the struggles that both these teams have had, the Patriots are not only riding the struggle bus, I think they are driving the struggle bus. They only have 3 points in the last 2 games. I'm sure you've heard about that all week long. And they have not scored a single touchdown in the last 10 quarters of play. The last time the Patriots scored an offensive touchdown was in Week 3 against the New York Jets when Pharaoh Brown caught a 58-yard touchdown pass. It has been 10 quarters, 2.5 games since the last time we saw the Patriots hit the end zone. I'll tell you right now, I live in the New England Patriot area, and I've got to say, they're having an absolute meltdown right now with the offensive production, or lack of offensive production that the Patriots have had. I give an edge to the Patriots in coaching. I give the edge to the Patriots defensively, but with just how poor the offense has been in New England, I don't know. And the offensive line is hurting right now. And Max Crosby, one of the better pass rushers in the NFL, I could see them giving Mac Jones some fits. I could see it being a very ugly, sloppy game. I have the Raiders winning 17-10. I don't think there's a ton of points. I think the Patriots finally find the end zone for the first time in a handful of weeks. Maybe it's not even because of their offense. Maybe it's because of the defense. I don't know. But I think the Patriots at least find the end zone somehow, some way, whether it's through a mistake of the Raiders offense or on their own offense. Give me the Raiders 17-10. Ugly matchup here. Stay away from this game. Now we dive into another divisional matchup. This time we're looking at the NFC West here. We have the 2-3 Rams hosting the 1-4 Cardinals. This one a little bit later in the afternoon. It's a 4:25 start here, Eastern time that is. The Rams Cooper Kupp obviously looking to shake off some more rust and really get back into the swing of things. Him and Puka Nacua are going to be a dominant force. I firmly believe that. Cooper Kupp just needs to really get back and round out into form and get back to full steam ahead. And I think you have yourself a really threatening passing offense over there in LA with Matthew Stafford leading the way, 2 really good wide receivers. I'm excited to see what this Rams offense turns into over the next few weeks here. Both teams' strengths offensively, though, are basically the other team's weaknesses defensively. When you look at the Cardinals, their bread and butter is obviously the ground game. Joshua Dobbs has been lightning in the bottle for the most part for the Cardinals to this point. I think we kind of got a little more of a true look at Joshua Dobbs, though, and what he is as a quarterback for the Cardinals last week. However, when things are going well, they've had an excellent rushing attack, 6th best rushing attack in the NFL. And the Rams, they've kind of been letting teams move on the ground. 120 yards per game, that puts them at 20th in the NFL. So there is like a strength to weakness combination on both ends. And like for the Rams, their bread and butter is obviously the passing game. They're not a super run-heavy team, even though Kyren Williams has looked good in some spots. It's really all about just what Matthew Stafford does with his arm and how he's able to deal out to his wide receivers. And when you look at the the passing defense of the Arizona Cardinals, 250 yards a game. They're near the bottom of the NFL in yards allowed through the air. And on top of that, they're not necessarily great at stopping the run either. They've been fairly poor defensively altogether, but more so through the air than on the ground. I like the Rams in this one here. Rams should improve to 500, especially now that Cooper Kupp's back in the fold. I think this Rams team starts to become more and more threatening, but I do think that the Cardinals can hang in there. I feel like the NFC West, their divisional matchup games wind up being a lot more competitive than people anticipate. So I have the Rams winning, but I have them winning 27-20. So I think they win by a touchdown, not anything too crazy here. Losing James Conner is definitely something to keep an eye on for the Arizona Cardinals, and I think that could maybe set back the offense a little bit more. But for right now, 1 touchdown score difference. Give me the Rams. I like the victory there. Now we dive into the Philadelphia Eagles being hosted by the New York Jets, and the New York Jets, man. Offensively, I just don't really know if I can give them a chance in this game here. Eagles defense has been very good to this point in the season. While they do let teams move a lot through the air, they have surprisingly. It's funny because it doesn't feel that way, I guess, until you really look at the numbers, but the Eagles allow about 250 yards a game through the air, but they don't let anyone run the football. They're allowing a very low 61 yards per game, lowest in the NFL right now on the ground. So I do think that this is a team that kind of matches up really well against the Jets offense because the passing game is not super threatening right now. Zach Wilson has been good in some spots, but not great in the majority of them. And Breece Hall, being the lightning bottle that he is for this running game, is now running into the NFL's best run defense. So I'm a little bit concerned for how this Jets team is going to do offensively against the Eagles. Coupled that with the fact that the Eagles are scoring about 28 points a game right now. They might not be the prettiest team offensively, but they certainly will grind their opponents and beat them down to the very last second of every single game. And it's not always the prettiest form of offense, but it is effective, and they just beat teams up for 60 minutes until the final bell rings and they're standing tall with another victory. It's going to take a massive defensive performance if the Jets want to win this game here, and we've seen some pretty big performances from the Jets defense so far this year, and they've still lost games. So I don't know if the Jets can get this one done here. I don't think it's going to be super ugly, because I do think that the Jets defense can at least slow down the Eagles a bit, but I have the Eagles winning 25-16 pretty comfortably. I don't really expect too much from the Jets offense in this game here, especially like I said, because the best thing they do is run the football, especially with the way Breece Hall has looked now off a snap count, and the Eagles have just not let anyone run the football. So best of luck to the Jets on this one here, but I like the Eagles. This next game that we're looking at here is actually one of my favorite, if not my favorite, matchups of the weekend, because I think there's a lot of intrigue surrounding it. You have a 3-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers team coming off a bye week, going up against and hosting a very hot Detroit Lions team. This is one that I actually really had to sit down and think, okay, like, who do I think is going to come out victorious in this game? And it took me some time to really kind of sift through the numbers and everything and go through my thoughts and opinions and ultimately come up with an answer for. Because right now it feels like Tampa Bay is kind of on this like unexpected run that no one expected to be talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers leading the NFC South at 3-1. I don't think a single person did. And you look at the Detroit Lions, they're basically meeting every single expectation that everyone had hoped for every single week. The defense has looked great. The offense has been able to demolish people on the ground. They have probably the best offensive line in the NFL right now. Passing game is a top 10 unit in the NFL right now. They're fourth in scoring, nearly averaging 30 points a game. I mean, there is a lot to like about this Detroit team. And I think for me right now, while I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing from this Tampa Bay unit, they are doing a great job protecting the football. The defense has been forcing takeaways every single game. They have 10 takeaways in just 4 games. That's basically 2.5 turnovers a game. That's ludicrous. And you're going up against a Lions team that is somewhere in the middle when it comes to turnover differential. They don't really turn the ball over too often, and for the most part, they're honestly dominating when it comes to their offensive performances. So you have some, varying factors on both ends that kind of favor both of these teams here. But I think I buy the Detroit Lions just a little bit more than I do the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is another one of those games where it's like you look at Tampa Bay and you're like, okay, 3-1, kind of a Cinderella run right now. This is your test. Are you legit, or did you just kind of fall your way into a really good circumstance of being 3-1 because of the teams that you were playing leading up to this point right now? Detroit is the massive favorite in this one, I think, by a margin. You have Tampa Bay, again, on a Cinderella run, but I don't know if they can get it done. And I feel like I just rhymed there a couple times. I swear I'm not doing that on purpose. But I do think that the Buccaneers can put up a good fight. So I have the Lions winning, but I have them only winning 24-23. That's how kind of uncertain I am about this, because I would not be shocked to walk away from this game going, wow, Tampa Bay got it done, last second, big victory, Baker Mayfield maybe leading a touchdown drive, or even a field goal victory, something like that. But I also really believe in what the Lions are doing right now, and I have a hard time picking against them. Now we're looking at some Sunday Night Football, and this is one of those games that, I mean, you can dive into if you want and try to get into like the nitty gritty and go over what you think could be the deciding factor and maybe leading towards a New York Giants upset. Or you can be realistic and just kind of do what I did and say Buffalo victory. There is a lot going wrong with the New York Giants right now, and for Buffalo, coming back from London with the emotion you saw coming from that team in that loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars, it happened last time. When they lost to the New York Jets in week 1, they went on a 3-game tear. And unfortunately for the Giants, they're catching Buffalo off of a tight loss where they were very unhappy about it, very emotional about it. And I really think, going to be on the receiving end of quite the butt kicking by the end of this game here. So I have Buffalo winning. I have them winning 39-10. Defensively, Buffalo is a really good unit. I know there's some injuries. Losing Matt Milano and Tre'Davious White the last couple of weeks definitely hurts, but there's still a very deep roster altogether on the defensive side. I have no doubts in my mind about what this Bills offense can do, especially against a defense that is allowing 30 points a game in the New York Giants. Give me the Bills, 39-10. I think they run away with this one here. Whatever the spread is right now for the Bills, it's not enough. I think it was like 14 the last time I looked. I don't think that that's enough. You could bet Bills minus 20, and I'd still feel pretty good about it, to be honest, and that's ludicrous. And then to wrap things up, we're looking at Monday Night Football. We've got ourselves the Dallas Cowboys coming off of a shellacking at the hands of the 49ers and a LA Chargers team that, coming off of a bye week, is a little bit banged up, but also set to get some pieces back. Mainly running back Austin Eckler. It sounds like they will have him in the backfield going into this matchup here, and I think that's going to be huge because the one real weakness of the Dallas Cowboys this season has been their run defense. They're 21st in the NFL when it comes to allowing in yards per game. That's probably been the big weak point that the 49ers kind of went and targeted, and for the most part, yeah, they got it done through the air, but I don't think you can understate the opportunities that were taken on the ground by the 49ers in that game. And I think that that's something that the Chargers need to consider going into this matchup as well. If you want to find success against the Cowboys, yeah, obviously your bread and butter as a team is passing the football with Justin Herbert, but don't be afraid to give Austin Eckler those touches, especially if coming off the bye week they think he's really good to go and they don't need to limit his snap count. Austin Eckler, one of the best running backs, arguably I would say he's a top 3 running back, and I don't really think he's number 3. So you have Austin Eckler in the fold. Don't be afraid to run the football, especially with Justin Herbert. I know he's dealing with a fractured finger on his non-throwing hand, but that is something that you have to think about there. You want to try to, mitigate any contact as much as possible while that finger heals, and thankfully that happened leading into a bye week, so he got a week to, or basically 2 weeks to kind of rest that and not have to worry about it as much. But if you can, expand that time of limiting as much impact to that hand as possible so he's able to get that hand back to 100%, while it isn't his throwing hand, it is probably the hand that, he goes under center with. It's, it's something that you have to, it's ball control. Your hands hold the football. It is something that he has to think about while he's playing now. So don't be afraid to lead this game running the football. As for the Dallas Cowboys end, though, this has to be a get-right game for them. You come into this matchup here, you're going up against the league's worst passing defense, allowing 299 yards a game through the air. This is a game that you have to win, coupled with the fact that the Chargers do have some injuries that they're kind of concerned about right now as far as questionables. Joey Bosa is on that list. Derwin James is on that list. Dean Leonard is on that list. You have 3 guys right there, all having to do with the pass defense, and Joey Bosa being a guy who can help stuff the run as well. This is a get-right game and a good opportunity to put yourself back on the right track after a devastating loss to the 49ers last week. This is one that I think is tough. I don't really know if there's a clear favorite in here because I feel pretty good about the Chargers coming into this game here off some rest, but I do feel like the Cowboys are going to put themselves in a position to bounce back off of their loss. And I'm not super high on either of the coaching situations of both the Chargers and the Cowboys, to be completely honest. I do think, though, that I like Mike McCarthy a little bit more than I do Brandon Staley, who seems to try every single way to possibly lose a football game. So there is that, but I think I'm leaning Dallas on this one here. I think we get the bounce back game. I could see I almost said Bears, excuse me. I think that the Cowboys defense could give the Chargers offense some issues. And I mean, I feel a Cowboys win. I'm going to my gut on this one here because, like I said, I don't really think there's a true favorite in this one here. I know it's in LA, but what is the home field advantage in LA right now? It's basically non-existent. It's basically, in a way, it's another home game for whoever's visiting, it feels. And I could see Cowboys Nation maybe traveling hard for this one here to try to, help the Cowboys to a victory in a must-win, not a must-win situation, but a game that you'd rather win than lose as the Dallas Cowboys right now. So I'm going to go Dallas. I think it's a tighter affair. I think that both offenses will find some success because both defenses have a weakness that the other team can attack, mainly pass defense of the Chargers, run defense of the Cowboys. But what I've seen from the Cowboys defensively at least leads me to believe that they can be more effective than the Chargers, especially with some of the injury concerns that the Chargers have right now. If they don't have like Joey Bosa in the fold or someone like Derwin James in the back end of the defense, that really hurts. So I'm going to account for that possibility. I'm going to go with the Cowboys. I have them winning 27-23. Nothing too crazy, but they do wind up winning a tighter contest. But those are my picks for week number 6 of the NFL. Again, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on my picks and your picks. Share them in the comment section down below. Let's discuss and have some football conversation as we eagerly await Thursday Night Football tonight between the Chiefs and the Broncos. But that is it for me. I appreciate it if you made it to the end of the video. I will see you all next time. Have a good one.